Today I'm going to show you the only rib recipe you'll ever need. Today we're making ribs, not just any rib, but the best kind of rib you can make in the backyard. I'm talking about the spare rib or St. Louis style rib. And this is how I do it, and this is more of a template that you can use to basically do anything with ribs. We're going to be doing a nice sweet and spicy rib with different kinds of smoke, and it's going to come out really tremendous. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit that like button and turn on that bell notification so you get informed whenever we post any sort of video. Okay, grill's coming up to temp. It's we're aiming for around that 275 mark, 250, 275. So while that's working, what we're going to do is we're going to get these ribs trimmed up a little bit, get a nice coating on them, along with a couple of my favorite different rubs. Okay, so we got the bottom side of these ribs, and first thing I want to do is I want to take off this little flap here. You can kind of see it's not really so much of a rib, and it's just going to end up getting burnt in the end. So I'm going to remove that. It also kind of squares it off a little bit, makes it look like a proper rib. And I'm going to do the same thing kind of on the opposite end. You see this little kind of mini rib here? That's not going to cook all that well. So for the sake of presentation, I'm going to cut off these two pieces here, these two end ribs. And by no means do you have to throw these out. One of the things you can do is you could freeze these, maybe throw it into some soup, get a little like split bean soup, or throw it in some baked beans. Still really good meat, but I'm probably just going to find another use for it. And then finally, I want to trim up a little bit of this fat. You see this kind of hard fat? That's not going to render all that well. So let's just get rid of it. You don't have to go too crazy. Don't spend too much time. But yeah, if you can get like a good piece like that all at once, that is to your benefit. Okay, next thing we're going to do here is you got that silver skin I'm sure you've seen before. And it's not required to take it off, but it's a barrier and it's not going to be any help as we try to impose some flavor. So take a little butter knife there, and then you grab a little paper towel like this. I use this to blot off the rib earlier. I'm gonna grab onto it for a little bit of traction, and then in hopefully one swoop, got most of it there. And the last thing I'm gonna do, that thing had some heft to it. You see this little piece of kind of flat meat? I'm gonna go in and try to even that out a little bit, because I want these things to cook evenly, and that's probably just going to end up getting a little bit burnt. And we want to make sure that the seasoning is sticking to the rib and not necessarily that flat meat. So when I got the difference between a spare rib and a St. Louis style rib is the spare rib is a big hunk of meat here, and the butcher that I got this from actually did a pretty good job of breaking it down. The only thing that I'm going to do is there's still a little bit of that flat meat, that rib meat on the top here. So I'm going to come in and just remove that and make it a little more uniform. I'm going to cut through some of that cartilage. Yeah, you can see that's more of that St. Louis style shape that we're talking about. So these ribs are all trimmed up nice and they look really good, and this is an important part that I want to drive home. Probably the single best thing that you can do that's going to improve your ribs and your pork butt and really any meat, but I think especially pork, is go to the butcher and specifically pick out a piece of meat that has really good marbling and intermuscular fat. When I go to the just the regular grocery store versus going to the butcher, there's a clear difference. And so I got these from the butcher, and there you can see the fat running through there, really nice even streaks, and that's going to be moisture and really good flavor. You know, sometimes you go in there and it's just like not a lot of intermuscular fat running through, and it shows up in the final product. So I definitely recommend taking the extra time, go to the butcher to pick out that special piece of pork. Okay, so we're going to start on the bottom side. Presentation side is up, so that's the last thing we're going to work on. And first thing, some basic yellow mustard here. So single streak. You're not going to taste too much of this, but it's going to go a long way in helping that rib hold on to some of these seasonings. And we're using two different kinds of seasoning. First one we're going to use is the barbecue rub. This is from Malcolm Reed over Killer Hogs, and I like this one as a good all-purpose barbecue seasoning. It's got a little bit of sweet, not so much on the heat side, but it provides really tremendous color in the end. Got some chilies, some paprika, salt, pepper, garlic. And you can see it just gives an incredible color right away. And second, we're going to be using Hardcore Carnivore Red. Again, a really good all-purpose barbecue seasoning for pork and beef, but I like this one because it's a little bit more savory, also a little smoky and a little bit spicy. Really complements the Malcolm Reed barbecue seasoning. Similar color. Really nice red. It's going to come out in the end like a super nice mahogany color, which is what I'm always aiming for. I'm going to flip this and do it to the same thing to the other side. Mustard. Killer Hogs, a little bit more of the sweet rub. Coming back with that hardcore carnivore red. Now I like the red too because it has a little bit of a little more texture. You can see the granules in there. Really nice. Malcolm Reed's a little bit more powdery. This goes complements it nice. So what we're going to do here is we're going to let this grill come up to temp. We're actually almost there, 275. We're going to let these sweat for a couple minutes and then we're going to throw it on. Okay, grill's up to 275-ish. Yeah, we're about 5 degrees south. So the last thing we need to do right now is get some smoke on it. For ribs and pork in general, I like hickory, I like apple, and I like cherry. So I usually use about 2. I'm gonna actually mix all 3 in today, just because I have all 3 on hand. So to start, we got some cherry smoking chips. They didn't have the chunks at the usual place, so these will do just fine. So we're gonna open it up and give these guys a little shake, just a little, because we don't want to over smoke it since we're using 3 different kinds. That's probably the equivalent of a small chunk. Got full chunks of apple, so I'll throw a couple of those in, kind of right on the fire, so they start to combust. And then finally, got some on the table here. I got some hickory chips as well. You can see it's already igniting. So, it smells fantastic too. That's going to be some really good flavor on these ribs. So you can see that smoke is automatically starting here. So I'm going to put the heat deflector in. That looks good. Get the grate on. Okay, those wood chips have been on for about 10 minutes or so. You don't want to throw the meat on right when you throw the wood chips on because that smoke is a little bit heavy. So this is kind of light and just a little bit lighter smoke, and that's the good flavor that we're aiming for. So we're going to throw these ribs on here, make sure they're nice and straight because that's how they're going to cook. And I'm really pleased with these and how they look and the nice shape and everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this shut, and we're probably going to come back in about 30 minutes or so and check them, see how they're doing, make sure that crust isn't getting too dried out. But stick around, we'll be back in about 30 minutes. Okay, these ribs have been on for about 45 minutes. Let's open it up and take a look. You can see colors looking really nice, but it's definitely starting to dry out. So we want to take that. I actually didn't tell you about this. This is it's apple juice and water. So I would call it maybe about 3 parts water, 1 part apple juice, just for a little sugar, but I don't want it to caramelize too much. So we're going to give it a little spray. We're not going to drown it. We just wanted to give it that sheen back when we first put it on. So real fine setting on the sprayer. That's looking pretty good here. I'm probably going to come back out and check it in about 30 minutes, but I'm expecting these ribs to be on here for, maybe an hour and a half or so, depending on temperature fluctuation. So it's all about color. The real tender, or the way we get the tenderness is through the wrapping process. So we're going to get this to the color that we want, make sure it doesn't get too dried out, but we're going to check it here in another 30 minutes or so. Okay, these ribs have been on for about an hour and 45 minutes or so, around that 275 mark. And they're looking really good. I came out and spritzed them probably about 3 times over the course of the last hour and 45 minutes, and we're going to pick them up and see how they feel. They still got some firmness to them. That's going to break down once they get into the wrap. But the color's really there. Color's nice, and I'm ready to pull these off and get in the wrap. Okay, these ribs look really, really nice here. Good color on the back end. Wouldn't want them to go much longer. You can see that disintegration. That's just what you're looking for. As this starts to break down, as we effectively braise this in this wrap, these bones are going to become more and more disintegrated, and that's how you know this thing is done. So we're not really going to do too much to it. The only thing I'm going to do, add a little bit more moisture to it. And I'm using Heath Riles here. This is tangy vinegar sauce, and I like this a lot. I like using vinegar-based sauces for a wrap like this because I have found over time, we're just going to give that a little drizzle down the backside. I've found over time that if you use a super sweet sauce, that is going to actually caramelize more, and it's going to make for a little bit tougher skin. If you want to add some sweet sauce after the fact, or maybe in the last 5 minutes or so on the grill, totally cool. But for this, I think the vinegar helps it break down better. So what we're going to do now, that's all in. Make sure you got your gloves here, heat gloves. We're going to get this all wrapped up. And I would advise against wrapping it too much because at this point, this has got a nice seal on it. It's double wrapped, but I can open it up and check it real easily. I don't have to come and tear into everything and compromise the ribs in order to give it a check. So great, that's everything I need right now, and this is going to go back on the grill at that same 275 mark. Okay, so these ribs have been wrapped now for about an hour, and we're gonna pull them off and take a look to see how they look and if they're done. If they're nice and tender and everything, then we're gonna move on to the final step. And this brings up something that I've been wanting to talk about, and it's a little bit of a hot take and controversial in terms of barbecue. I see a lot of people doing the 3-2-1 method, meaning 3 hours smoked, 2 hours being wrapped, 1 hour back on the grill with some sauce. Even when I have been cooking at a lower temperature than 275, I have always felt that that completely is overdoing it. In my experience, whether it's 250, 275, a couple hours in the smoke, maybe an hour wrapped, and then maybe 30 minutes with some sauce on it just to finish up and get it all tacky, that has worked out for me more times than I can count. So instead of being at 3-2-1, it's more of a 2-1.5, because we're going to throw these on. If they're done, we're going to throw them on for about 30 minutes with some sauce. That's my opinion. You can give it a try, but like I said, this is a template for you to use with a bunch of different rib recipes, whether you want like some spicy ribs and you want to sear them over a flame at the very end, or maybe experiment with some different sauces or woods. This is just a template that's worked well for me. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna pull these ribs off, stick with the probe, make sure it feels nice and tender, and if it looks good, we're gonna throw them back on with a little extra sauce to finish them off. They're feeling good. But the only way to know for sure is to open them up, and this is why we, wrapped in the way we did. So now I can open this up real easily. I don't have to tear into it. Take a probe test, and if it needs to go back on, I haven't destroyed everything. So let's get the thermo pin out and let's give it a little poke. All right, let's open these up. And if you don't have some heat gloves, I highly recommend them. It makes your job a whole lot easier. I'll put a link in the description of these. These are the favorites for me. I've gone through several pairs, and these just rock. So let's open this up. That's looking really nice, really good color. And like I said before, that's the disintegration that we're aiming for. Always happens on these thicker bones. So that's a good sign that they're getting there. And as I stick into this, it's definitely feeling really good. And ribs are tough. You can sometimes be it could be 195 to maybe 205 in terms of temperature. It really just depends on how much fat is in there as well. So I'm poking this. That's right at, can you see that? 205. Yeah, 205. I'll stick it right in the middle here. 206. Go with a thicker one here. 199. So that's all I need. And the most important thing is they feel really good. Feel really nice and tender. So what we're going to do now is we're going to flip these over, get rid of this aluminum foil. We're done with it. Put it back on the grill, and then we're going to hit it a little bit more with some of the same Heath Rowell's vinegar sauce that we used earlier. So this is how I do it. I just put the aluminum foil on the grill, kind of fold that down, and we're going to basically roll it out. So careful, because these ribs are tender. Oh man, look how nice that looks. That's what we're talking about. That's beautiful. Let's get rid of this aluminum foil carefully. Whoop, got a little spill. Let me move these back to their position. Cool, so last thing, we're gonna put that same sauce on. And again, this is where you can get a little creative. If you want a little bit more of a sweet rub or a sweet sauce, I would use that. It's a perfect time to put that on. You wouldn't want to put it on earlier, because that would really caramelize up, and I don't think it would do you any favors. One of the things I've also done is I've mixed the vinegar sauces with some of the sweeter ones, and that works really well too. But this is just the flavor profile I'm going for today. Just a little vinegar bite, not terribly sweet. I'm originally from the Carolinas, and so we like our vinegar. So this is a perfect rib for me. So that's good. That's all we need to do. What I'm going to do now is we're going to shut it down. Like I said, we're still running around 250, 275, and we're going to come back and check this in about 30 minutes, and it should be good to go. Okay, these ribs I think are done. We're going to pull them off. They've been sitting on the grill here with a little bit of smoke just to finish them off, along with this Heath Rowell's vinegar sauce. We're going to pull them off, give them a good look, slice into them, and of course taste it. They're looking pretty. Look at that. How beautiful is that? Smell incredible. Awesome color. And I'm not going to say awesome sauce. I always want to say awesome sauce. And I always cringe afterwards. So, it's a very good sauce, but I'm not going to say that term. How good does that look? That's the really nice mahogany color that we were going for. I think the only thing I'm going to do right now, before we cut into it, is give it one final drizzle. Just to give it a little sheen. That is pretty. Let it get on the bones, let it get on the table. That is what I'm looking for in a rib. How good do those look? We got the final sauce on there, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna flip them over. I know there's a temptation to want to cut into it from this angle because it looks all nice and everything, but you really get a better view of it all from the back side, and that's looking really nice. Perfect amount of char, not crunchy char. We're gonna cut into this. Cut into a few of them here. Actually, we'll just cut into all of them, why not? And they're feeling really good. You know, these are not fall off the bone, you know, slow cooker style ribs. These are ones that have a little bit of a bite to them still. And, you know, you've seen that bite test. That's what we're going for here. So we're gonna flip these back over. Line them up. Oh, nice, look at that. Real nice smoke ring. I'm happy with that. Folks, these ribs look incredible. I can't wait to get a taste here. Let's recap real quick what we did. We took a really nice rack of spare ribs. We trimmed them down a little bit to turn them into St. Louis style ribs. And then we put some mustard on, get a nice binder. Then we hit it with some How to Barbecue Right, Killer Hogs, the barbecue rub for a little bit of sweetness. And then we hit it with some Hardcore Carnivore Red for that savoriness and that spice. We smoked them for about 2 hours, and then we wrapped them with Heath Ryle's vinegar sauce for about an hour, and they cooked down and get all nice and tender. And then we pulled them off, put a little more sauce on them, and let them roll in the smoke for about 30 minutes. Again, this is my take on ribs. It's not the 3-2-1, it's the 2-1.5. 2 hours smoked, 1 hour wrapped, and then 30 minutes to finish them off. And they came out really looking fantastic. Good color all over, nice and juicy, good smoke ring. Last thing we need to do is take a bite. I'm super excited. Beautiful color, feels really nice and fatty. That's the benefit of going to the butcher and actually picking out your cut of beef, making sure it's got that good intermuscular fat that you can see here that's broken down. It's really gonna pay dividends. So let's give it a taste. That's what it's all about. That's that bite through. I am pretty proud of that. Tremendous flavor, really balanced, sweet, spicy, smoky, that wood. You pick up all that cherry and the hickory, a little bit of that apple actually. Man, that came together really nice. I'm chewing in real time here. That is fantastic. This is why this is the only way I do my ribs. It's never failed me. I've tried a bunch of different ways to do it, and this is just really spectacular. And the great thing about it is that you can get creative with it. If you got a rub that your homemade rub, you can totally do that. If you want to experiment with different rubs or sauces or wood, totally go for it. But I think the fundamentals of this rib recipe are tried and true, and I definitely think you should give it a try. Folks, if you like this video, certainly appreciate a thumbs up and a subscription, and comment. Tell me what kind of rubs you put on your ribs and how you do ribs. You know, what kind of sauces, what kind of rubs are you using? You know, how long are you smoking it? And are you going to give this a try? Be sure to stay tuned for weekly episodes, and again, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you know when we pump out new material. And again, this has been KamadoMax. Thanks so much for sticking around.